Hey guys, RJ here, and we've been waiting. We've been waiting so long for this entire series to find out exactly what Clay Jensen did. Let's go. So I want to do this week a little bit differently, where I want to talk about everything that isn't the main characters, which would be Clay and Hannah in this episode, and I want to talk about everything else first. So one, the Just to Jessica stuff has really finally bloomed. We finally see everything that is going on between these two, why they've been acting so freaking weird over the last, we already knew. As the viewer, we already knew. I'm just saying, finally all the other characters finally get that actual clarification. Was Hannah lying on those tapes? What'd she say about Bryce? Was it true? And I kind of had a feeling that this was coming, right? You had Jessica and Justin acting really strange. They were fighting all the time. You never really got the actual answer as to why, and we knew why because we saw what happened, but they weren't even willing to admit it to themselves or to each other. And obviously now the shit is out in the open. People know that Bryce raped Jessica, and I'm astounded that he had the balls to text her at the end of this episode saying, are you okay? I think Justin and Jessica are done. I don't know how you come back in a relationship like this. I think Justin's obviously sorry that he didn't put a stop to it, but I really don't think there's any mending that. So the two other main things that happen in this episode would have to be the Alex stuff where, Justin comes over and we get a little bit more insight into Alex's home life where his dad is very proud of manly men. We beat people up and eat raw steaks. And yeah, his dad is both kind and definitely strange because he can't see that his son is going through something ridiculously emotional and he's just kind of chalking up to testosterone. And I like the parts where Justin comes over to Alex's and they kind of almost bond. They have a little mini moment like that. It's just, I like the fact that happened. I like that they interacted like that, but yeah, we end up, obviously that takes us over to Bryce's, and I don't know. I think his dad's definitely a little strange, and I think Alex is clearly in pain, and I don't think his father or anyone else is seeing it. And then the last thing I want to touch on, and that is Mr. Porter and all the other kids involved in this. So we end up finding out from Clay's mom at the end of this episode, not series, at the end of this episode, that they are going to trial. They are going to have depositions on all of the kids or anyone mentioned in this list that Mrs. Baker ended up finding near the end of this episode. There's no way. There is no way all of these kids don't eventually get caught. The tapes are out there in this little, the drawing that she drew on the piece of notebook paper with all of the names circled on it, including Bryce, Clay, all of that stuff. Everyone, I'm guessing it's a blueprint for the tapes pretty much, and that is what Hannah's parents found. So I really think that it's only a matter of time before this all gets out. But now that Clay knows that there's officially a trial, he probably is I'm kind of screwed too because I'm implicated in this in a way. But as we find out in this episode, Clay is not really at fault, in my opinion anyway, as to compared to the other characters in this show, at least from a negativity standpoint. You guys like that segue? Me too. All right. No, but seriously, Hannah and Clay, these two, it's the main two characters of the show, but man, them on screen together, they know how to really they have the chemistry, man. There's no other way to say it. They have chemistry on set, on screen, whatever you want to say. These two have chemistry. And I've also watched a few of their YouTube interviews or whatever for their, their pushing of the show. They are seriously perfect, at least from what I can tell for each other. Dear Lord, these two characters know how to interact. And so we have Hannah originally saying I'm not going to go to the party. Clay's woo, I'll be a rebel, and he ends up going because Jeff told him he had to. And that also total sadness right there, seeing him at the party and once again trying to help Clay, not letting him leave from the party when he wanted to. Jeff is my boy and you will be missed, sir. So yeah, we have Clay who's at the party. I love that he arrives over an hour early or whatever, and he starts, helping to set chips up and stuff. Yeah, classic nerd culture here. I've been the exact same place, so whatever. I love Clay. I love how awkward he is and Jessica's face when he shows up early. But yeah, so we have Clay there. Hannah ends up coming actually, and yeah, they flirt, they have a good time. They're kind of recapping parts of the earlier episodes that we had seen of Jessica's party. And then we get to the stuff that we haven't seen. And this includes, but is not limited to, making out, light touching, heavy groping, and a little bit of humping going on. We finally get to find out what happened. It's pretty much what I assumed, actually. I really don't think I was this far off on this point. I figured they didn't actually have sex because Clay would have been, he would have probably known a lot more about Hannah had they actually done the dirty. So I figured that they got to first or second base and then stopped. And that's kind of what we saw is, they're getting hot and heavy. Or first throughout the whole party, they're flirting in every single room. And you see Clay's confidence almost grow by a little bit. But I like how, when he's listening to these tapes, he, flashes back to real life and he looks over at Tony like, this wasn't easy. What is she talking about? And he's like, well, this is from her perspective, which she sees Clay as this smooth character where Clay is like, no, I was shitting my pants that entire time. And I've been in Clay's shoes. This is not an easy thing to do. When a girl comes to the party and she's coming for you and they both openly admit that throughout their conversations in the house, man, the pressure is on Clay. The pressure is on, and he doesn't really crack. Surprisingly, he eventually, he tried to leave, but he does eventually get the train rolling, and they're having a good time. And once again, I just love how they act together on screen, man. It makes me all the more upset that it's not actually going to happen. And I actually want to touch on the future Hannah and Clay that could have been had Hannah not done this. And the scenes with, them walking down the hallway together and everyone looking at them and him meeting Hannah's mom, it was all touching. I thought it fit in the moment perfectly too. So yeah, there's just a lot of emotion throughout all of these scenes because what happens afterwards, but we end up seeing, they're getting hot and heavy. Stuff is obviously, clothes are being taken off. And then eventually Hannah kind of snaps. And this doesn't actually happen because of anything Clay does specifically. It just happens because she starts imagining all of the other boys like Justin and everyone that's hurt her up to this point. And she kind of just loses control and, tells him to get off. And he doesn't understand why, because Clay's obviously, as we've learned throughout this series, a little bit socially awkward. And I feel for the kid. He's standing there and, they just got done getting pretty hot and heavy. And then all of a sudden she's yelling at him and he doesn't know what to do. And he's a shy kid to begin with. And they've always had this, awkward relationship where it's not all the way in yet. And I did not mean that as a pun. But seriously, I feel for both of them. Hannah wants him to stay because she's acting out and she wants someone to stay there and say it'll be okay for her. And Clay does not get that sign. He, ends up leaving. We obviously know what happens. He goes with Jeff in the car crash and stuff. But the scene where him and Tony are up on the hill and Clay's, pretty much almost done listening to the tape. And or maybe he is done listening to the tape and he's why don't I just jump, and Tony kind of mocks him a little bit, what are you gonna do, go join Hannah in the afterlife? And yeah, that was all very emotional. I really love the scenes between Clay and Tony. I like the humor that they provided. He's a terrible Yoda or shitty Yoda or whatever the joke is. And I don't know. I love Tony and Clay on screen. I think that they have some really good back and forth with each other. So that was all great too. I like the way that they mix that into the serious parts of this episode, keeping it light-ish. This is a heavy show, so keeping it light-ish is in moderation here. But yeah, we end up finding out that Clay doesn't actually do anything wrong. And am I the only one that was a little bit let down by this? I don't mean that in a bad way, and I'm definitely not going to knock the score on this episode because of it. I'm just saying, I was kind of hoping, a little part of me was yeah, maybe Clay's actually a really bad dude, and we've been led, this whole 11 episodes that he's actually a great kid. Well, that's not the case, all right? He is actually a good kid. He probably could have maybe said something or done something a little bit differently like him and Tony talk about. But in the grand scheme of things, I'm sorry to say, Clay, you are not the reason that she is gone. I disagree with that entirely, where he kind of eventually puts it on himself. But I think it's pretty much pure coincidence of all of those things happening around one another. And yeah, I don't know. Clay, I feel for you, man. I don't know how else to kind of console you on this one. I think you have a plan of what you're going to do moving forward, and I'm really curious to see what it is. Well, guys, that is pretty much it for me today. Oh, I did want to say one more thing. The music at the beginning of the episode for the first 5 minutes where you hear that thump, 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 and it's a good deep bass and it keeps the tempo up. props to Netflix on that front. So anyways, guys, let me know what you think. Do you guys love this show as much as I do still? I could not be happier. I really can't. It takes me back to some of my nostalgia days in high school. I really relate to parts of this story. So let me know what you think down below. Do you guys still love this series? Do you guys have a theory for me? I have 2 episodes left. It makes me extremely nervous. I'm really curious to see how they end this series. So let me know your thoughts down below in the comments on how this is going, where you think it's going, and how you think I'm doing, I guess. And give us a like if you like the video. Subscribe to us here on YouTube. That helps us out a lot. And we have a bunch of social media links down in the video description. So until next time, guys, we'll see you soon.